Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of the most mysterious questions in the Bible. Where did Cain get his wife? If Adam and Eve were the first humans, then where did Cain's wife come from? Did God create other people? Or is there another explanation? This is a question that skeptics love to ask, and even many believers struggle to answer it. But don't worry, by the end of the video, you all will have a solid biblical answer. Alright, let's set the stage. In Genesis chapter 4, we read about Cain and Abel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel both brings offering to God, but God accepts Abel's and rejects Cain. And this makes Cain furious. And in his anger, he kills his own brother. Because of this, God punishes Cain by sending him away as a wanderer. Then in Genesis 4:17, out of nowhere, we see Cain knew his wife and she conceived and bore Emma. Wait, what? Where did this wife come from? The Bible never mentioned any other woman before this. So did God create other people beside Adam and Eve? Were there any other civilizations at the time? Let's break it down step by step. First, we need to settle something important. That Adam and Eve were the only humans that God created them directly. And the Bible is crystal clear about this. In Genesis 2:7, it says, Then the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And the man became a living creature. Then in Genesis 2:22, God creates Eve from Adam's rib. This means humans traces their ancestry back to this first couple. Some people have suggested that maybe God created other humans in different places, but Bible never says that. In fact, the New Testament confirms all of humanity comes from one man. Acts 17:26 says, From one man he made all the nations that they should inhabit the whole world. This means Cain's wife had to be descendant of Adam and Eve. But how? This answer is in the next section. One of the biggest misunderstandings about early Genesis is that people assume Adam and Eve had only three kids: Cain, Abel, and Seth. But that's not true. In Genesis chapter 5 verse 4, it says, After Seth was born, Adam lived 800 years and had other sons and daughters. That means Adam and Eve had many sons and daughters. The Bible just doesn't list all their names. Back then, people lived for hundreds of years, which means they could have had dozens of children. So Cain's wife was mostly like one of his sister or a niece. Now I know what you are thinking about it. Wait, isn't that incest? Isn't that wrong? Anyway, let's talk about that in next section. Today, marrying your sibling is illegal and considered wrong both morally and genetically. So why was it okay in Cain's time? There are three big reasons. Reason number one, genetic purity. Adam and Eve were created perfect by God. Their DNA had no genetic defects, meaning there was no risk of birth defects from close relative marriages. Over time, sin and the fall corrupted the human genome. But in the early generation, that wasn't an issue. Point number two, no law against it yet. The Bible didn't forbid sibling marriage until Leviticus chapter 18, which means thousands of years later during the time of Moses. By then, humanity had multiplied enough that marrying relative was no longer necessary. Point 3. Population growth. In the beginning, humanity needed to multiply quickly. Since Adam and Eve were the only human ancestor, close relative marriage was the only way to fulfill God's command to be fruitful and be multiplied. Genesis 1:28. It wasn't until much later that such marriage became dangerous and forbidden. But let's take a step back. Why does this even matter? Why does the Bible tells us about Cain's wife and his descendant? Let's look at what happened after Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. In Genesis chapter 4:14, Cain tells God, "Whoever finds me will kill me." Now the question raises, right? Who is Cain afraid of? This tells us that Adam and Eve family had grown significantly by the time Cain was punished, even though the Bible doesn't name all their children. It implies that there were many people living by them. And here's the most amazing part. Despite Cain's sin, God still showed his mercy. Instead of killing him, God put a mark of protection on him so no one would harm him. In Genesis chapter 4:15, we can see that. This is important because it shows two things. The spread of sin. Cain's murder of his wife was just beginning of how sin corrupted humanity. The world quickly became violent and wicked. And two, God's mercy. Even though Cain sinned, God still protected him. This points to God's greater plan of redemption, which would ultimately to be fulfilled through Jesus Christ. Cain then moves to the land of Nod, where he marries and had children. In fact, Cain even built a city, Genesis 4:17, which again suggests that Adam's family had grown significantly. So, why does this question even matter? What does Cain's wife teach us? Here are three keys. The Bible teaches that all humans come from one couple, Adam and Eve. That means we all connected and created in God's image. Genesis chapter 1:17. Cain's story shows how fast sin corrupted the whole world. It started with Adam and Eve's disobedience, and within one generation, it led them to murder. This is why we need Jesus to break the power of sin. Even though Cain's sin, God still showed him mercy. And if God shows grace to Cain, how much more will he show grace to us when we turn to him? Cain's story isn't just a random Bible fact. It's a part of a bigger picture of God's plan to redeem humanity. And that plan leads to Jesus Christ. Alright guys, that's it for today's deep dive. Now you know where Cain's wife came from and why it makes perfect sense in the biblical narrative. If you enjoyed this, make sure like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. And I want to hear from you. Do you think this explanation makes sense? What other biblical mysteries should we cover next? Please let me know us in the comment. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. God bless you all.